Growing your own vegetables is already rewarding, but saving your own seed to plant the next year from that thing you grew feels like having superpowers, especially potatoes. Besides that, good quality seed potatoes are expensive, so this saves a ton of money, especially if you're growing any unique varieties. But if you're going to save your own seed potatoes, you got to make sure they keep good quality through the winter. You don't want them to be super sprouted or excessively wrinkly or shriveled come spring, like these. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 2 different methods we use for storing seed potatoes from fall, when we dig them, until springtime, when we plant them, so that they're in excellent condition for planting. This will give you a better and bigger crop come harvest time. Potatoes are affected by something called physiologic age, and, well, humans are affected by this too. Chronological age is simply the number of days old your seed potato is, while physiologic age is an accumulation of all the things the potato has been through, like dealing with temperature swings, drought, pest pressure, and poor storage conditions. Stress can basically make your seed potatoes age prematurely. You know how some people look a lot older or younger than they actually are? We want our seed potatoes to have Dolly Parton or like Paul Rudd energy. I swear those two don't age. And why we care about this is that the lower the physiologic age, the more eyes and the more sprouts your potato plant will make, and it will produce more and bigger potatoes. You'll get the most out of your seed potatoes, your gardening space, and all the work you put into growing them. So let's pour ourselves a cup of ambition and tuck away some seed potatoes for safekeeping over the winter. Okay, let me set the scene. It's fall time, headed towards winter. You've just dug your potatoes and you're wanting to set some aside for planting next year. This is the perfect time to be thinking about this. And if you aren't sure the right time to dig potatoes or how to cure them, you want to go back and watch the previous video in this series because we want to start the process of saving seed with cured potatoes. And the first important thing to do when choosing which potatoes to save is to save the best ones. Do not save any that are cut or nicked, of course. And don't save any that have signs of disease like potato scab or any other skin conditions, because you don't want to potentially pass that along to next year's crop. You want the most perfect looking ones. Next, think about the size. I really love to plant whole potatoes instead of cutting a big potato into small pieces, if I can. So I'll look for the egg-sized ones to save, which I can just throw right into the ground at planting time. Or I'll look for ones that I'll just cut in half to make 2 pieces. This isn't always possible, and sometimes I have to save the bigger ones. You'll just have to use whatever you're working with there. Now decide how many you'll need. Get an idea of how many hills you want to plant, and then visualize or count how many seed pieces you think you'll get from each potato. For example, I think I'll probably get 3 or 4 pieces from this potato, 2 from this one, and then this one I'll plant whole. Now the goal when saving your own seed potatoes is to keep them in good condition, the best possible condition you can, and don't let them sprout prematurely. There are 3 things that'll make a potato start to sprout that we want to avoid. Number 1 is light. Number 2 is warmth, specifically any temperature over about 50 degrees. And then 3 is time, and there isn't much you can do about that one. No matter the condition, a potato will eventually sprout. We're just going to try and slow it down as much as possible. For the 99.5% of you without a root cellar, we have to find a way to keep the potatoes cold and dark. My very favorite way to do this is in the ground. It seems like a not so obvious solution, and I think it's a fantastic and very underutilized way to store potatoes. I mean, we already know they like it down there, so let's use that. And actually, let's back up for a second. Since the potatoes will be in the ground for a while and there are plenty of things that'll want to eat them, we use these gopher baskets. This is a wire mesh basket that's meant for cradling the root ball of a tree in the ground so that a gopher can't eat it. And it works really well for potatoes too. It's actually the perfect solution because the potatoes get the benefit of being in contact with the moist soil and they can breathe, but they're protected from critters. I will share the size of the baskets we're using and link these in the video description below. As long as you're a little gentle with them, you can reuse these for many years. And you can fill them as much or as little as you want. Just make sure you can fold over or close the top, which I'll show you in a minute when we bury these. This is kind of as simple as it sounds, with a few important details. We just use our in-ground garden space and dig a big hole. The depth we aim for is about 2 feet. I wouldn't do this in a raised bed. I don't think you'll have the same protection as the ground offers. And while Carl shows you his shoveling skills, let me talk about depth and cold and freezing temperatures for a minute. A little disclaimer, I'm not exactly sure which climates this will work in, so you may want to experiment with a smaller quantity before putting all your eggs or potatoes in one basket. And if you do try this, I'd love it if you shared your results in the comments here so we can all help each other out. For your reference, we are Zone 4 Wisconsin. And in colder climates, we have something called a frost line, which is the average depth our ground freezes every year. Where we live, they say our frost line is over 5 feet deep. I don't believe that. I haven't seen that. One year we actually buried a temperature sensor with the potatoes to see how cold it got. The problem was that the signal didn't quite go through all that soil very well, and it got weaker the colder it got. This was a slightly warmer winter, but looking at the data we did collect, I'm almost certain the ground did not freeze 2 feet deep that year. Or if it did, it was just barely freezing. Last year, on the other hand, was one of the colder winters we've had in a long time, and we didn't have very much insulating snow cover either. Lots of people lost hardy perennials because of it, so if ever there were a good test year, this was it. And our potatoes did just fine in their 2 feet deep hole. To get back to the task for a moment, as you can see here, he rolls down or folds over the tops of the baskets and then places them in the bottom of the hole. Keep in mind how deep your hole is versus how tall the baskets are and how much dirt will actually be over the top of them. And here's the thing I wish I knew. Are the potatoes freezing and thawing and coming out just fine because they're potatoes in their natural habitat and they were designed for this? Or are they not freezing for some reason? Are our winters not cold enough anymore, or have we happened to find a microclimate in our yard that stays warmer? Or maybe they're turning their starch to sugar, which acts as antifreeze? I do not know what is happening down there in that hole, and I wish I did. There's really not any data that I can find anyways about this. And there are a lot of variables here, and every winter and every climate is different, but I can say that this has worked really well for us for multiple years now. One important step is marking where you buried your potatoes. You don't want to find yourself in the position of a crazed treasure hunter running around digging multiple 2 feet holes. So for this, we use some simple flags. The final thing that we do is cover where the potatoes are buried with a thick layer of insulating leaves. This will give them just a little bit more protection from the cold. Honestly, pile them as high as you can. You can't have too many leaves here. You could use wood chips or pine needles too, anything that's easy to put on and then remove in the spring. And that's it. Set it and forget it until springtime. Let's fast forward there. We crawl out of our dens after the winter hibernation, and once the ground is thawed, we dig these up. Usually sometime in April, following the timeline for prepping and planting seed potatoes that I go over in the first video of this series. Don't dig them up early. Dig them according to your green sprouting and planting timeline. After Carl rakes back the matted down layer of leaves, he starts digging. Carefully, you don't want to mangle your wire basket. When he gets close, he gently pulls back as much of the soil as possible before lifting them out. And to see a basket of beautiful, absolutely pristine potatoes come popping out of the ground every spring is truly thrilling. I feel like this is some sort of best kept secret of the gardening and preserving world, and I love that it feels like working with nature instead of always against it. Also, as someone who thinks about preparedness, this is a really valuable thing to know how to do. Being able to store seed potatoes or eating potatoes through the winter without a root cellar is a pretty sweet survival skill. I really just cannot get over the quality of these potatoes when they come out of the ground. It's as good or better than the commercial potato seed production companies are storing theirs. Look at how moist and how plump they are. They're so firm, they literally look like time has stopped and they've just come out of the ground in fall. We set them out on newspaper to come to room temperature and for their surface to dry a bit before starting the process of green sprouting them for planting, which you can learn all about in video number 1 here. And just a reminder, don't forget to wash the dirt off your gopher baskets and then let them fully dry before storing them. Also, don't forget to fill in your hole. You wouldn't want anyone to break a leg. There's one other good option I found for storing seed potatoes through the winter, and if you saw my video on how to store eating potatoes, you might be able to guess what it is. In the refrigerator. It's cool, it's dark, and it works really well. So for this method, same rules apply. Start with your freshly dug and cured potatoes, pick out how many you need, think about quality and size. The best thing I've found to store them in is paper grocery bags. They are breathable, but they do keep in some moisture. I tend to use more bags with smaller quantities, which is because I'm saving a lot of different varieties, and it's possible that the folded over quality of a partially or less filled bag helps keep more moisture in. As you can see, these also stack really nicely on my dedicated potato shelf. We also just kind of set and forget about these too. I might check on them once during the winter, but if cured properly, it's really rare for one to rot, so I pretty much just leave them alone. And it's the same thing in the spring. We pull them out, inspect them, and set them on the table to warm up and start the green sprouting process. As far as what temperature to keep the fridge at, any normal fridge temperature should work. In the last video, I talked about cold-induced sweetening, which is when potatoes develop a sweet flavor and an off taste if kept too cold. I cannot find any information that says this affects how they grow. It's also been my personal experience that it does not affect how they grow, so this isn't a concern for seed potato like it is with eating potatoes. And you can keep your fridge around 40 degrees. Just make sure it doesn't freeze. For your reference, here's a comparison of the two storage methods. On the right, the very moist and firm potatoes we just pulled from the ground, and these on the left are the same variety that was stored in the fridge. You can see they've lost a little moisture, they have a few wrinkles, but they still look great. I also planted the same quantity of both the ground stored and fridge stored potatoes so I could compare the yield, and they both produced the same quality and quantity of potatoes, and both were excellent. One final thing I wanted to mention is that depending on where you live and what potato diseases you have in your area, you might need to replenish or add new life to your potato stock every so often. When I notice that a particular variety is becoming less healthy, with the plants dying back earlier and the yield starting to decrease, I buy myself some new seed potatoes and start the cycle over. This is probably every 3 to 5 years, depending on the variety. If yours never decline, that's great. If they do, try some new seed. I had so much fun talking about potatoes in this series. They are one of our most beloved crops, and we've been refining our potato growing and storing and eating skills for over a decade now. You should find everything you need to know to grow a good crop of potatoes here in these videos. Part 1 is how to green sprout and plant. Part 2 is how to weed hill and control pests. Part 3 is all about harvesting and curing and storing. And now you have all of my info about saving and storing your own seed potatoes. Maybe I'll make a part 5 with all of my favorite varieties and my favorite ways to cook potatoes. Let me know if that would be useful to you. As always, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. If you found this video helpful, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you are the first to know whenever a new video is posted.
You can't use that.